And our guest is Dr. Mykel Taylor from K-State, and we're talking about cash rent or crop share when it comes to Kansas farm ground. Dr. Taylor, maybe let's dig in a little bit more into the research. I would guess there probably, while there's eventually agreement, there's probably a whole lot different if you're the land owner or the land leaser.
Sure. So you have a completely different perspective on your risk when you're the landowner versus the tenant when it comes to picking these crop share versus cash rent. For landowners, it's pretty interesting. We look at the amount of communication that goes on in different types of leases, and we ask them, how many times a year do you talk to your tenant? And with a crop share, they tended to talk more and be in more communication, and that makes sense because you have a lot of talking about, well, what chemicals are going to be applied, what fertilizer, what's the overall end yield, and what kind of a check are they going to get, versus the cash rent, the fixed cash rent, which can really just be, okay, we agree to an amount and then we don't talk very much, from that point on. So we saw some communication differences. We also saw some differences just in preferences of landowners for what type of tenant they would pick. Farmers tend to think that it's the highest bid that matters to them or to landowners, and that's all that matters. But when we asked landowners what their preferences were, family considerations were number one, and number two was reputation of farmer for taking care of the land. And the amount of money that was bid on the ground was fourth in the list. So that was pretty interesting to kind of get a sense from landowners that they really care about, how the land is being taken care of as much or more that they do about how much money they're getting off of that lease. That
is kind of interesting, but it probably does make sense. Now, if folks want to learn more, and I would guess you have it down, broken down regionally, and is it crop specific and all those different factors kind of thrown in to give us the bottom line numbers?
Yeah, we like I said, we did the survey across the whole state, and we accounted for crop rotation. So we looked at that. We didn't have as much diversity on irrigated versus non-irrigated, so we didn't have that kind of diversity in there. Most of it was non-irrigated ground, but we do have that information in there. We've been studying land values and rental rates for a long time, but this is kind of a twist, as you said, where we're looking at the negotiations between landlords and tenants, because one of the things that we've learned is that landlords are becoming generationally and geographically removed from the farm, and a lot of landowners become that because they inherit ground. Fully about 60% inherit the ground as opposed to purchasing it themselves, and so that makes for some different dynamics, and we really want to understand those dynamics when we're trying to work with farmers and landowners on coming to a good business arrangement that's solid and keeps both parties in a good position.
So I assume things like this and items of discussion can be found at what agmanager.info?
Yes, of course. We've put all this information on agmanager.info under the Risk and Profit conference proceedings, and then we've got other information on the website as well. And then, of course, you can always contact me if you have questions.
All right, Dr. Taylor, it's always great to catch up with you, and maybe next year we'll be in person together at the Risk Profit Conference. So thanks.
You bet. Hopefully we will be.
Dr. Mykel Taylor, K-State ag economist, has joined us. Stay with us. We'll have more coming up.